Good evening and good morning to everyone, and welcome to the SJC Language Center's Professional Perspectives. I'd like to welcome you all, and especially our guest today, Jodecia Parkins. And I'd like to just give her a short introduction before Anita and I begin our interview. But I do want to say that I have known Jody for several years. And it's been a pleasure to become friends with her and to mentor her for a short while when I lived in Atlanta, and to watch her career flourish, really. So we're excited to hear more about it today. As you read in her bio, Jody is originally from Jamaica. So maybe she'll tell us a little bit about that, a different country than many of us have been in. And she migrated to the United States when she was about 17 and has gone to college. So I'll be asking her about studying abroad in just a few moments. So she studied accounting and tourism, and also got her master's in accounting. And after spending several years doing that numbers job, which I know nothing about, she has begun more work in project management. And so we're very excited to hear more about that also. So Jody, welcome. We're really happy to have you. I'm going to spotlight you.
Okay.
All right, hold on a second. All right, there she is. Is that Atlanta view behind you?
No, I think it's Seattle. It's just one of those views that I like to use.
Okay, it's beautiful, beautiful. Well, we're really happy to have you, and I know that a lot of these young ladies coming from St. Joseph's College are probably very happy also to have another young lady that they can listen to and relate to. So feel free to change the subject if you need to. And what usually happens is Anita and I will interview you for about the first 30, 40 minutes, and then we'll open it up to the public. And I was thankful that you sent a very interesting little PowerPoint that maybe we could show my English for Employability students later towards the end, if that's okay with you. We've been talking about visual resumes and things like that, so they'll find it interesting. Okay, well, I'd like to start out, Jody, by asking you about this idea of studying abroad. Would you mind telling us some of the reasons why you decided to leave your home country and study in the United States, and why you also chose the subject that you chose?
Yeah. So I will start off by saying getting into college in the US was by no means an easy feat. Definitely studying the SATs or the ACTs, that was entirely new to me because that's not a system that we use in Jamaica at all for college. We have a completely different system. And so having to learn the American system and understanding the way that knowledge was taught here, I have to say that was a big challenge. And it's not that the material so much was difficult, it's the way in which it needs to be taught and then regurgitated in order to pass the exams. That was entirely new to me. And so it was a learning shift for me, but one that I obviously was able to overcome, thankfully. I will say also choosing a college to study, because I knew wherever I went, for the most part, I was going alone. I didn't know anyone in the US. My brother at the time, he had migrated and he was living in Florida, but none of the schools I was interested in was anywhere near him. The closest one, which is the one I actually wound up going to, was about 2 hours away from him. So I studied at St. Leo University for my undergraduate. It's a small Catholic university, literally in the middle of nowhere. Not very much going on around it, but I think my family felt a little bit more security sending me to that university because, you know, it had a little bit more of a Catholic environment, and I grew up as a Christian, and so sending their one and only child, or not child, but daughter, off to school to study, it just felt a little bit more safe knowing that she'll be in somewhat of a safe environment. So that component was a little interesting too. And another reason why I chose St. Louis University out of all of the option was the scholarships that were available to me, because as a foreign student coming in, there's a lot of opportunities that are not available to you that are available to US students for funding universities, understandably so, right? But there weren't a lot of scholarship opportunities, and St. Leo offered me the biggest scholarship, and that's one of the reasons why I chose them. Now,
why accounting?
Yes, as far as my field of study, I actually started off as a psychology major, believe it or not. I think that's a trend. Most people just kind of start off in psychology. I thought I wanted to be a forensic scientist because I used to watch all of these great TV series with forensic scientists, and I thought, oh, how cool. So I'm like, forensic psychology, yeah, let's do that. But no, that did not work out. I think I was a psych major for about a semester. No, probably 2 semesters, so about a year. And then there was a career fair that was happening at St. Leo, and I met with an accounting advisor there. And he was Jamaican, and we just got into a really good conversation talking about future career goals and opportunities available for specifically for international students, and how much more difficult it is depending on the field that you choose to go into. Because in the US, one of the things that's very important once you graduate is to get sponsorship from your employer, and that is not easy. And not in all fields will you find employers who are willing or able, not even just willing, but able to support and sponsor a visa and go through the entire process that the government requires. But what he...
Oh,
sorry,
no, sorry, somebody must have been
okay.
Unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, but what he made clear to me was that there were a lot of opportunities that were available in the accounting world. And I should backtrack to say, in Jamaica, when you get to about 4th form, you have to declare a major. And it's usually you're going along 4th form. What grade is that?
I don't know. How old are you?
10th grade, 15, 16, somewhere there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we would, well, they would be probably in India, they would be intermediates. Okay. So, just so we know the age.
So around that time frame, you kind of have to declare a major, because that's going to determine the field of study that you are that you take your exams in, what we call the CXE exams, the Caribbean Examination Council exams, which is based on the British system. I don't know if it's any way similar in India. I know there was some British influence in India as well. But you declare a major, and the track that I chose was business. And so I had been studying business and accounting. And so I had that background, and he was extremely bewildered by why I even changed to psychology in the first place. But I wanted something different. I had been doing accounting for what felt like forever, and I just wanted something different. So I went with psychology, and he welcomed me back to the fold of accounting. And I was an accounting major throughout the rest of my college years there. But I also did a second major, and at first it was a minor, but I turned it into a major because I found that hospitality and tourism is something that has influenced me my entire life. My mother has worked in hospitality all her career. And then growing up in Jamaica, just being surrounded by the tourist industry, that's just something I wanted to learn a little bit more about. And so I kind of married those two things together and majored in both. And then my internship, I also did an internship in Barbados in hospitality at a Hilton resort there, which was an incredible experience. But I also did an accounting internship, which is not as incredible an experience, but it was a good experience nonetheless, because all experiences are worth something, right? But in the end, again, this comes back to getting your visa sponsored. It was very difficult to find a hotel that could sponsor a visa for me, whereas I had several opportunities for accounting firms to sponsor a visa for me. So I wound up going more down the accounting track than the hospitality track from a professional standpoint for that reason.
Wow.
Did you ever become passionate about accounting, or was it just something you knew was going to help you earn a living?
It was something I knew was going to help me earn a living. But I will say I enjoy data analysis, and accounting isn't just numbers, okay? Because it's about understanding the data and making sense out of it and being able to tell the story that are comprehend and then communicate the story that the numbers are telling to you. And not everyone has that skill, and it's really a great skill to have. But it's a little less about the numbers as it is about being able to understand them and communicate them in a way that everyone can kind of relate to.
Wow,
well, I just want you to know that Anita is our resident psychologist, by the way. So I'm going to turn it over to her now.
Well, I'm glad to meet someone who made it all the way through psychology.
Thank you. Basically, what I am quite keen to understand from you is, how did you feel having to make the shifts over and over again? And then how did it affect you in the personal sense, as in your self-confidence, your self-esteem? How did that affect you? And did it also affect your work?
Well, I'll start with the shift from Jamaica to the US. That was a massive shift, right? And I didn't know what what to expect, and I think there was a lot of nerves, there was a lot of nervousness, a lot of uncertainty. But for the most part, I was just open to whatever could happen. I knew why I was going. And so I had my focus set, and I was ready for whatever challenges might come up. And I don't know, I think it's just that frame of mind of I'm just going to take on the challenges as they come, that, I don't know, college for me it wasn't easy, but it wasn't as challenging as I think it could have been, being that, never been to the US before. This is kind of my first time living in the US, and so but it was good. It was good. And I think it was a mentality thing, being prepared for that. As it relates to my shift in majors, I feel like that was a little bit more challenging. And this is something that we'll probably touch on a little bit later, but the reason, or part of the reason why psychology was so challenging for me, was the advisor that I had. I felt like we just weren't relating. And so what I have found throughout my career is that the people that are influencing me, the people who are in leadership over me, the people who I'm expected to learn from, are who are helping to shape my career, is very key and very important to me. And so not having an advisor that was very relatable or available to me to help to shape my path in psychology, because it was very difficult to figure out as an international student, how do I make this work? And he could not answer these questions for me. Then I found an advisor who had went through pretty much the same thing in an accounting space, right? He was also an immigrant. He also came to the US to study. He knew the path through accounting and what that would take. And having someone who could lay it out for me, like, these are the steps that you need to take, that was critical and that was important to me. And so making that shift was challenging, but in a little ways more meaningful to me, because I felt like there was someone to help guide me along the way.
Wow.
So what were some of the steps that he advised you on that you would like to share with others?
Well, for that specific thing, okay. So one of the things that he told me about was this relationship between the master's program that I wound up going to and the university at the time, that helped with scholarship and funding. Because again, as I mentioned, funding your education here in the US as an immigrant is a big deal, because we don't have access to the same kind of funding. So knowing that there was a possibility of a full scholarship, depending on how well I did in the major, to be able to get a master's, I mean, yes, please. Tell me more. So that was a key component. But also he talked about And if you know anything about the accounting industry, there are about 4 large accounting firms that kind of, I don't know, they're kind of at the top of the accounting industry. And for the most part, they're very favorable to international students and to sponsoring visas. And so he helped me to understand that process and what that would look like. And also just understanding the connections that he had for internships, as well as the connections that he had for grad school, and then how those two married together could result in a more clear path for my career. And again, that was just something very critical to me. I needed to see where I was going, and he was able to lay that out for me to help me to see the steps to move forward.
Wow. So does that mean that having a mentor really helps?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially when you are in an environment that you're unfamiliar with or uncomfortable with, having someone who knows the landscape and can help you to figure it out is absolutely critical. And I'll say throughout my career, moving from college all the way through my career and where it is now, I have always had a mentor. And for whatever shifts I made in my career, I made it a point to find someone that could feed into me, that could help me to grow and to blossom into who I thought or who I think I would like to become. And I think that is a critical component, is finding someone who you can have those honest conversations with about your career.
And
Even if,
regular,
and what did you say, Anita?
regular conversations.
Regular conversations, even if it's things that you don't necessarily want to hear.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think sometimes we turn on when somebody's saying something that we don't want to hear, and yet we need to listen to those voices also.
Yeah, and that's the kind of mentor you need. You need someone who can have those tough conversations with you, even if you don't want to hear it. Someone who's not going to shy away from that because they don't want to hurt your feelings, or they don't know if you can handle it. No, I want you to be as honest and as transparent with me as possible, even if I'm not ready to hear it, because it's what I need. And so those are the kind of mentors you need, people who are not afraid to speak into you for where you need to be.
Wow.
So you talked about some of your turning points as far as changing your subject, your major and such, and then getting into your master's. But what about this change from accountancy to entrepreneurship and project management?
That was another big shift. Yes, absolutely. So after graduating from North Carolina State University, where I did my master's, I started my career at Ernst & Young. And I mean, EY is an incredible place to work. I mean, when you talk about opportunity, there's so much opportunity within the firm itself, and so many avenues for growth, and a lot of great mentors. I absolutely met a lot of great mentors there. But public accounting is a lifestyle, and it's a lifestyle you have to be open to. And I thought for a long time that was something that I wanted to do. But what I realized is, I think for me, I needed a little less analytical at times, and a little bit more people and creativeness, which public accounting doesn't always lend itself to, or for the most part does not lend itself to, right? And so I was in this tax group for about, I think, 2, maybe 3 years. And then I shifted to a program management group within EY, because I wanted to first understand, is this project management something that I even want to do, right? And there are aspects of project management that I have done, I would say, throughout my entire time at EY. So project management itself is something that's kind of blended into a lot of the work that we do without us even realizing it, right? And some people are better at it than others, but it's this way of being organized and this way of ensuring that work gets done that is intuitive to most roles, I would say. All right, but I wanted to get more fine-tuned or more specific project management experience. And so within EY itself, I shifted into another group that would allow me to do that. It was still within tax strategy and finance, but it allowed me to get more true project management experience. And by doing that, I realized, I kind of enjoy this a little bit more, because it's not that I don't like doing the work. I absolutely love data analysis, but I don't love doing it all the time. But I like managing people and ensuring that they get their jobs done and that they do it the way that it needs to be done. But I don't necessarily want to be the one to do it. And so that's why I realized, I think this project management thing might be for me a little bit. But I was still within the public accounting sphere, which I wanted to get out of. And I was doing taxes, which I didn't particularly enjoy doing taxes or managing taxes. And I wanted to get some experience within other industries. And so I made that transition by first getting some certifications in project management. So I'm a project management professional, or a PMP certified, as well as a Scrum Master. And there are a couple other certifications that I'm toying with getting as well that will just help me not just to have them to put on my resume, but to help me to be a better project manager as I continue along this career path. But with that, having received those certifications, I decided to start a small LLC for myself, and I named it Gritnetics. And there's a story behind that as well. It's just this book that I read by Angela Duckworth called Grit, and where she defined what it is that motivates people and why it is that some people tend to be more successful than others. And it's this element of grit, as well as, a little bit of genetics, but it's just an element of grit, just this something within you that tells you not to give up and to dig deeper and to keep going. It's a really great book if anyone ever wants to read it. And it was very influential in my choice of deciding to step out on my own and create this small company. And this company has allowed me thus far to pick up small projects along the way, because another thing that I found that I was interested in was supporting small businesses as well as nonprofits, and just helping them to figure out their processes and improving their processes, because process improvement and technology transformation, that's another component that I find interesting, or something that I try to learn a lot more about and implement as I go along as a project manager. But that shift from Ernst & Young was huge, because Ernst & Young is a huge company. I had a lot of benefits. I had a lot of great support systems. I had a lot of mentors at EY that I was walking away from because I felt like it was something that I needed to do to get this element of freedom that I felt I was missing at the time. So yeah.
How long ago was that?
That was, funny enough, during the pandemic is when this all started. I think the pandemic just kind of uproared a lot of things that I had been suppressing in some ways. And I think it was in 2021 that I started the LLC, and that I stepped out and started my own company and journey in project management.
Wow, that's amazing. You sure seem like you're totally focused and involved in what you want to do, how you want to plan and go about doing things. Is there any recommendation you'd like to give to people who would be confused? They wouldn't know what to do. Would you have any suggestions for them?
Yeah, I will say that making that shift is not something that I did lightly. It's something I sought counsel over. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but your mentor, and I have a mentor that sits outside of any company. So she's someone that mentored me at St. Leo University when I was doing my undergraduate, and I kept that relationship with her because I thought she was just an extremely great mentor, and she's someone that can have those candid conversations with me, and so kept that relationship with her. And she's a hospitality professional with an accounting background as well, so we kind of had the same background. We took very different career paths, but we could relate to that hospitality and accounting background, and then wanting to take that further and seeing where that went. And so I kept her as a mentor, and every single career decision that I make, I run by her. And we have a whole conversation about the pros and cons and why it is that I even want to make this shift and make this decision. And so that conversation was key. That conversation was critical. And, I think I even had conversations with Vicky about this at the time when I was considering making career changes. So it's never something to do lightly. It's something to absolutely seek counsel for and with. And there are other mentors at Ernst & Young that I had conversations with, because I don't want to do something just because I'm in a place where I feel burnt out or overwhelmed. I want to have guidance from people who are maybe not so close to the problem or not so close to the situation, who can give more clear feedback and to help me see things that I may not be seeing at the time. Okay. And so having these conversations help to solidify and confirm that, public accounting just doesn't sound like it's for you. It doesn't sound like you're doing something that you're necessarily passionate about or something that you want to do long term. And if you can plan out or lay out the steps to move out of public accounting and to move into something more meaningful, then do that. And it was a process. It wasn't just I woke up one day and decided, okay, I no longer want to do this and I'm going to quit tomorrow. No, there was a process. I laid out all the plans that I needed to do. I needed to get my certifications in place. I needed to set up my LLC. I needed to have a certain amount of funds set aside before I did this. So in case things didn't work out, then I had a little bit to fall back on. So it's definitely, I would say, one, talk to your mentors. Well, identify your mentors and talk to them, and then figure out what are the steps, what are the practical, achievable steps that you need to take in order to get where you want to get before you even make a move. But that goes back to my planning and organization mind, where I need a plan and I need to see where I'm going before I'm going to go. I don't like to dive into anything blindly.
So
Wow.
where do you think you're going now? Where do you see yourself in just say a few years, 5 years?
Ideally retired.
Really? You want to retire?
Well, but how I define retirement, right? When I say retired, meaning I am working more with more nonprofits, not necessarily because I need the money or because I have to work, but because I want to, right? Now, a lot of the projects that I pick up, it's because, well, I have to be able to afford life, okay? So I have to pay for life. And then on the side, I'm picking up some nonprofit or just some unpaid work that I find more meaningful. But long term, I want to do a lot more of that. I want to just support projects or people or organizations because I want to, whether or not they're able to pay me, whether or not they're able to afford me, but because I see the need, right? I see that there are processes that they need to be improved. I see where the Scrum framework can be applied. I see where there are some technological transformations that can be put in place. And I see where I can help the CEO or the owners of the different departments really grow and shape their own career and grow and shape the organization in such a way that it's more meaningful and it creates lasting change in the ecosystem of this world, right? And that's something that's important to me, is just shaping and leaving a trail behind that will last beyond generations. And I can't be the only one to do that, right? There are tons of people out there who are already doing that. And so it's just supporting them along the way.
Well, when you get to the point where you don't need to have money from, we'd love for your help in the language center. we need some, yes, but anyway, go ahead, Anita.
Absolutely.
So, as you said, that you've been planning and strategizing and then seeking a mentor's help and then working accordingly. Any regrets on the way?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I mean, there were challenging times for sure, right? There were times when I felt like I was at my lowest low. I was completely burnt out. I just couldn't. I needed space. I needed a break. I needed time away from everything and everyone. But I think all of those experiences really helped to shape who I am. So it's hard for me to have any regrets about anything that I've experienced from my career journey, because it's all been for the better, or been for the good. Because the lowest points, or the low points, the times when I didn't know what tomorrow was going to be. And I failed to mention this, and woe is me. I should have mentioned this, but one of the hardest things for me was this idea of feeling trapped, because as I mentioned, as an immigrant, you need that visa support, right? And not all companies are open to doing this. And so having had EY support my visa, there was a sense of loyalty to them. But then when I wanted to make that transition to another company, that other company had to be open and willing to support my visa. And that was very difficult to find another company to do that, because it's not an easy thing to do. And a lot of companies are just not open to it, right? And so making the transition from EY to anywhere else just seemed like an unsurmountable feat. Like it felt impossible. And for the longest time, I was I would say very depressed about it, because I wanted that freedom to choose. It's not even so much that I had to leave or wanted to leave, but I wanted that freedom to choose. And that freedom wasn't there for me until I got my green card, and I had more flexibility and had more availability to choose the different career paths that I wanted to go along. But no regrets, absolutely no regrets. I've learned so much from every single experience, and met a lot of great people along the way. And I think that's the most important thing, is I've met so many great people throughout every single path that I've chosen.
Have you changed your citizenship?
Not yet. I have a couple more years before I can apply for citizenship. I think I have 2 or 3 more years before I can apply for citizenship.
So talk to us a little bit about your work-life balance, because I'm sure you like to do other things besides work.
Oh yeah, I'll say I have significantly more work-life balance now than I've ever had in my 7 years as a professional. Because again, in different industries, just the free time or the flexibility that's available to you is not that much, right? But now as a contracted employee, I have a lot more flexibility in how much time I can take off. And I absolutely love to travel. And so that's something that's important to me. And I plan on each year, just schedule out the trips that I want to take, and then make that known to the contracts that I'm taking up, to say, these are the times that I'm taking off throughout the year. Because that's important to me, right? It goes back to that idea of freedom that I mentioned a short while ago. It's being able to live life and experience all the things that are out there to be experienced, that are important to you, right? But also getting that fulfillment from being a contributing part of society, right? So being employed and doing work that is meaningful. And you kind of have to find that balance between the two. And for me, it's just having the flexibility and the ability to travel as I desire to. And making the career switch and moving into project management and moving into my own kind of entrepreneurial pathway has really allowed me to do that.
Wow. And how about the role of language, since we are the language center? What role does language play in your profession, especially since you deal with numbers and then people? So
yeah, I would say the language of numbers and the language of people are a little different, but very, very important, right? As I mentioned with numbers, it's knowing how to tell that story, knowing how to communicate that to other people. But in general, just understanding how to communicate things to different people is very important. And I'll say, I don't speak another language. I speak a dialect from Jamaica. But sometimes my pronunciations, right, can throw people off depending on the words that I'm pronouncing, right? Or the way in which I say something, or the meaning behind certain words, even like the way that I intend for a word to be understood may not be the way that it's understood by someone else. Right. And so language is extremely important. I don't think it affects me as much because my first language is English. But I can see where language is absolutely critical throughout any organization from a means of communication standpoint. Just going back to my point on how we communicate and the words we choose to use to communicate, depending on the audience which we're communicating with.
Did you ever take any communication classes or anything, or did you just learn it through going to college? Or
I'm pretty sure I took 1 or 2 communication classes in college. But also I think along the way, throughout my career, I've learned different communication styles from different people. And I'll say for each department and each group that I've worked in, the communication styles are a little bit different. And the way in which they translate data and share data has been a little bit different. And so I think I now am a hodgepodge of all of these different people that I've learned from and how they communicate. And so the way that I communicate now is probably a combination of all of that.
you said something that really struck me about telling a story about the numbers. When you're analyzing data, you have to tell a story. Was that a skill that you had to learn, how to describe what these numbers are doing and explain it to people?
Yes, it certainly was, because numbers on a page by themselves, I mean, it could mean anything, right? You could pick it up and it could mean nothing to you if you don't know what it is. So being able to translate that to someone in a meaningful way, right? To someone who doesn't necessarily understand how it's even calculated or how this data even came to be, being able to give that backstory on the data, and then being able to say what the data is telling us now and about the future. Yes, that's a key component, and it's not something that it was not something intuitive to me. It's something that was absolutely learned in college, as well as during my time as a professional, being able to communicate that information to clients and to the like my associates, the people that I worked with.
Anita, do you have one more question? I have one more before we open it to the public, to the audience.
Just one from me. So you have had those stressful experiences. I'm wondering how you've been able to turn them into positive growth experiences. Is there a way to do it?
Yeah, you just I think the most important thing is just not let it overpower you, or not let the burdens kind of weigh you down. But I also think, and I think this is important, and I want to be careful with how I say this, but it's important to experience it, right? To not just brush it off and pretend that it didn't happen. It's important to allow yourself to go through it and then to take the lessons away from it, okay? And then carry those lessons forward. So for me, going through each of these experiences wasn't necessarily easy, okay? It wasn't something that I probably would have chosen if I knew it was going to happen. I would say, you know what, let's not go down that path. Let's not do that specific thing. But having been on that path and going down that path, you just have to allow yourself to go through it, okay? And just know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There just always is a way out of a situation. And again, I'll broken record here, mentors, people that feed into your life. You're never going through anything alone, or you never have to go through anything alone, especially in your career journey. There are so many people out there who have gone through what you're going through, or who have carved out a path. Maybe it's a little different from the path that you're carving out, but it's absolutely someone or something that you can learn from that they have done. And so it's reaching out and being open to those people and having them feed into your life and allowing them to help you to move forward and to get through those sticky situations or those not so great times in your career journey, and allowing them to lift you up and push you forward.
That's beautiful. That was beautiful. Thanks, Jody. My final question is, I don't know if there's such a thing in your work, especially as an entrepreneur, as a typical day. But if there is, could you explain like what a typical day looks like for you?
Yeah, it depends on the project for sure. But I'll say the project that I'm on now, a typical day, I choose to start my day at 9 a.m. I could start earlier, but I don't want to. So I choose to start my day at 9 a.m. I'm not much of a morning person, although I'm very surprised at how awake I am right now. I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah,
at 7 a.m. I feel like I'm very awake, but I'm not a great morning person. And so I choose to start my days a little bit later, around 9 a.m. I usually have a couple meetings in the morning, a couple projects that I'm working on for the client that I'm putting information together, or reaching out to people to get those information and putting that information together, whether it's in a PowerPoint or in an Excel spreadsheet, just collating all that information and then sharing that information broadly. And then just being open and available to fire drills that surely come up on a daily basis, just information that's needed quickly to be translated, and speaking about communication and the importance of language. In the project I'm on now, the communication is huge. Not that communication isn't huge in any other project, but in this project, the translation and telling the story through PowerPoint is extremely important to them. And so I feel like a lot of times in my previous projects, putting data together and putting it in Excel and putting a short blurb together about what the data is about is usually okay. But in this role, the story, the communication of the data is critical. And so putting together a spreadsheet alone with the data it's not okay. You have to translate all of that into a story and into a language that can be translated to upper management and to leadership. And so a lot of the time that I spend is doing that. It's figuring out what's the best way to tell the story. I know what the data is saying. The engineers around me know what the data is saying, but how do I get these top level executives to understand this data? What's the easiest way to get them to understand it and consume this data? And that's what I spend most of my day doing, is figuring how to communicate that.
And so that really makes me want to look at your PowerPoint of your data so you can explain it. But let's see if there's any questions from our audience before we show your PowerPoint. Let me look in the chat. Sometimes you may put your question in the chat, or you can raise your hand, or you can just unmute yourself and ask a question if you have one for Jody. Don't be shy. Manish? Manish, can you show your video and ask your question? I know sometimes you're able to, and sometimes your network connection's not good enough, but anyway, go ahead with your question. Manish, can you hear me? You're muted, so we can't hear you.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, there was some technical issue. Yeah. Good morning, ma'am. Actually, just I want to know what are the challenges of pursuing higher education in distance learning, and how to overcome of that. For example, jobs or internship.
Job what? I didn't hear the last word.
Job and internship, ma'am.
Internship. Okay. So, Jody, what are the challenges of higher education and internships? And there was one other thing he said, and I can't remember. Anita, did you catch it?
Distance learning.
Distance learning. Yes, that's, yeah.
So I did not do distance learning. So I can't speak intelligently to that, I don't think. But I can say some of the challenges that I experienced with internships. it was challenging finding good internships, I would say, you know, after and as an immigrant or as an international student, internships are kind of your pathway to then getting sponsored, you know. And so there were a lot of internships that were available to me, but they were at organizations I knew would not sponsor my visa at the end. And so it felt in some ways like it would have been a waste of my time. But if you have, and I've seen a lot of my colleagues and friends who are currently still now at school or have graduated, but just based on all of our collective experiences, you know, I've seen situations where you just want the experience, you want the professional experience. And so even though you know that this organization isn't going to sponsor your visa long term, getting that experience is so important that you do it anyways, okay? Because getting that professional experience before, if you're planning on going to higher education, so going into your graduate studies, getting that even 1 year or 6 months of professional experience is key, because book learning isn't enough, right? Theoretical learning isn't enough. The practical aspect of it is going to help you to understand, first and foremost, do I even want to do this? Okay, because in theory, it can all look interesting. And then when you get your hands into it, then you realize I actually don't want to do this. And that would be a good thing to know that before you went to graduate school, right? I know for me, for example, I did an internship at one of the public accounting firms before I went to grad school, and I did it in taxes. And I'm telling you, at that point, I knew I don't want to do taxes. And so when I went to grad school, I still did accounting, but I knew I didn't want to do taxes. Okay. But I wound up in the taxes anyways, but in a very niche area of tax that wasn't the broader tax that I was doing during my internship, because I knew that's not what I wanted to do. So internships are very important from that standpoint, but they can be challenging. I'll confess they can be very challenging for international students to find, and paid internships are even harder, finding ones that actually pay as opposed to unpaid internships. And like I said, finding internships that could potentially turn into more long-term career opportunities that can be challenging.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions before I put her PowerPoint on the screen? Any other?
In the chat.
Oh, in the chat. Okay, sorry. In the chat. No, I don't see one in the chat. Not in my chat anyway.
Okay, may I read it?
Yes, please.
Great. So it talks about mentoring. Do we need to search for a mentor based on the profession I choose or for the issues of life? So is it one mentor for all or different mentors? How does it work?
I would say I have so many mentors for so many different things. For example, when I started, I mentioned the mentor that I have currently, which Vicky, you know her, it's Judy Holcomb. She actually, I think, did a series with you or with this group. And so I've kept that relationship with her from my undergraduate years. Okay. And so she's a mentor. She's someone that stays with me and will continue to stay with me, I think, throughout my career journey, but also during my different phases in my career. So during my first phase at EY, before I transitioned into a different group, I had a mentor, right? And he grew up and have been a part of business tax and incentives. That's the group that I was in throughout his entire career. And so he knew the path, he knew the trajectory, he knew the people I was working with, he knew the clients I was working with. And so he could help me to figure out how to shape out a career in that path if I wanted to stay in that path. But then when I didn't want to stay in that path, of course, I had a conversation with him about it because he was my mentor, right? As well as a conversation with my broader mentor, which I talked to not just about career, but about broader life elements that are going on. But when I wanted to make that shift, I had a conversation with all of my mentors. And then when I made that shift to this new department or area within the same company, I found a new mentor, someone who was within that landscape who I could relate to and who I could have conversations with about my career and my career trajectory. Okay, so I think having someone you can talk to about anything and about everything is important, okay? And having that mentor that you can turn to about your career and about what's going on in life, that is important. But also having someone who understands the career path that you're trying to take. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having multiple mentors. Obviously, I did that, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Just having someone, but having someone who understands the career journey that you're trying to take is important. But also understanding that if you decide that, you know what, this isn't the path that I want to take, that's okay. And your mentor should be able to support you in that. And all of my mentors have been really loving and willing and able to support me in that. So when I said, you know, to my first mentor, Daryl at EY, when I said, I don't think I want to continue along this path. And we had a conversation about it. And he said, all right, where do you want to go next? And he was definitely a support system in helping me to transition next to my other area. And he wasn't even my only mentor. I had so many people that I turned to for advice. So I absolutely support having mentors. I absolutely support having people that feed into you, but you also have to be careful about the people that you choose, right? And about the people that feed into you and about the, how you internalize that, okay? Because you don't want people who are just going to tell you what you want to hear. But you also don't want people who are never going to support you, or people who are constantly feeding negativity into you, or who, you know, if my mentors at the time had said, no, Jody, you're being silly, don't change, just stay here, you'll be fine, suck it up, you know, that would not have been supportive. That would not have been great advice for me at the time. But so be selective, you know, be intentional about the people that you choose to mentor you, and think of it like a job interview, because it kind of is. It's an unpaid job for them and for you, but it kind of is. It's someone who you're going to rely on heavily to help to shape your career, and that's not a decision that should be taken lightly.
All right, Jody, do you have 10 more minutes, or do you need to go also? Usually we keep this at an hour, but I so want to show your PowerPoint and let you tell us. I want to let you analyze your own data. So if you need, let me take a quick picture. If you guys can turn on your videos real quick, and I'll take a picture for our website and for Jody, and then I'll show her her PowerPoint. Okay, Mercy, Joycina, Sneha, Sweta. Quick picture. I won't force anyone though. I'll count to 3. Okay, hold on here. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. All right, so should I just share my screen, or do you want to share it, Jody?
Oh, you can go ahead if you have it pulled up.
Okay, hold on.
So this was actually the first time I had to visually represent my resume, and I thought it was very interesting that was asked. And also interesting that that's something that you have been talking about in your group, Vicky, about visual resumes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's becoming a trend or if it's something that a lot of employers will ask for, but it's definitely something I think helps to tell your story in a way that kind of pops off of the resume. And I used it for the contract that I have now. This is I used it during my interview period for that. And so if you want to jump to the first slide, Vicky. And so on this slide, it was really just giving a an overview of my career path from my education up to all of the certifications that I have achieved. And so it tells a story from my undergraduate university. And what I was trying to depict here is the idea of being a lifelong student. You know, you're constantly learning, you're constantly growing, and how I transitioned from being in accounting and to becoming a project management professional, because when you make career transitions, especially big career transitions, it's important for your resume to tell that story and for people reading your resume to understand that transition. And so that just tells the transition and also the paths that I chose to take in order to get to where I am today. I also wanted to highlight just some things I do outside of my day-to-day job, just some passions and social responsibilities. But I also wanted to highlight in this section just some areas that I focus on, not just in my career, but also outside of my career, just being agile and having some agile project management skills and translating that not, as I said, you know, to my everyday life, but also process improvement, relationship management, technology transformation, which I think I touched on a little bit, and then women in business and leadership. These are all things that are important to me and things that I'm passionate about and that I try to weave into not just my projects, but as I said, my everyday life.
And what about the bottom right hand? Mentoring, church community, nonprofit, spreading Scrum? Yeah,
absolutely. So I talked a lot about finding mentors and finding people to feed into your career journey. But I also think it's important to mentor and to feed into other people. And so having had so many mentors along my path, I then find it important to pay it forward, you know, finding, and I have several people who turn to me for advice and who I try to mentor and to help throughout their career journey. And so that's something that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about my church community and being involved in my church. I support a nonprofit and helping with project management and process improvement and helping her to shape the future of what she sees her company to be. And then after becoming Scrum certified and learning about the Scrum framework, that's something that I became very passionate about. And I really loved the way in which Scrum allows a lot of freedom and flexibility, and it's not just for technology, and it's, you know, it's something that can be used more broadly in a lot of different areas of our lives. And I really love that, and so that's something that I became passionate about and something that I try to do. I do.
I had to look it up. I didn't know about the Scrum framework, so I had to look it up. So if you need more information, guys, you can find that on the internet. Do you want me to go to the second page?
Sure. Yeah. And this one was a little bit more detailed for the interview, but I pared it back for the purpose of this conversation. And it just shows now, it takes a closer look at my professional experience from start to finish. I did talk about Ernst & Young and making that transition from being in one department to another that was more focused on project management and getting that experience. And then in 2021, starting my own project management consulting company, just to allow me to get some experiences outside of public accounting and to be able to go into different industries and get some experience there. And so far I've had 2 contracts since then with T-Mobile and Cox Communications, which are both telecommunications companies. And also being able to support some nonprofits as well in different areas. But some key takeaways or lessons learned to date. These were really just some call outs that I wrote down specifically for this. And I find that about 95% of why I enjoy what I do and why I stay in the contracts once I choose them is because of the people that I team with and how well people team together and how well I feel like it's a community and it's a collective group that I'm a part of. Also, Second takeaway is know what you're worth and don't be afraid to negotiate for it. And this kind of ties into the third point of build a network of peers and be open and transparent about your experiences. Because working with my peers or communicating with my peers about, hey, I'm going up for this job. This is the area. What I know that you've been in this industry for a while. How much do you make? Or what kind of experiences have you had? And having those conversations with them really helps me to know, okay, well, what's my value going into this so that I can be open and confident in negotiating my contract and not feel like I need to undervalue myself to go into it. But you have to know your value. And a part of that is knowing or being open and transparent and communicating with other people who are already within the industry. Another lesson learned, corporate culture and the tone at the top has a huge impact on how people relate to each other. And so when I'm choosing contracts or when I'm choosing companies to work for, it's understanding the landscape of the culture there, and how that is going to impact the people that you're working with. Because I don't know, I can't stress how important this is, because that you can enjoy the project, but if the environment that you're working in is toxic, you're not going to want to be there. And that's going to have a negative, or could have a negative impact on the way you do your work and the way you're able to show yourself at work. And then the last one was something that was very important to me, and it's a takeaway that took a while to digest, because this is something I thought I would have done, and it's that you don't have to climb the corporate ladder. It's okay to carve out your own path. And that's kind of what I did. I could have chose to stay at one company and kind of climb that ladder there and probably make partner and, be successful that way. And that's an okay career path. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, but it's not for everyone. And you don't have to feel like, because everyone else is doing it, that you have to do it too. It's okay to jump around and figure it out. If you want to figure out what industry you want to go in, or if you want to be a little bit more freelance, as long as you can find the way to make it work for you, then do it. There's no one journey or career path that's going to work for everyone. Okay. It's okay that you kind of have to shape your own path, and that's okay. Oh, I forgot this one was in here. So I added this just for today as well. So as I was, and I didn't mention this, I'm so glad this slide is in here, but as well as talking to mentors, I read so many books about figuring out what I want to do with my life and how I want to do it, and what it should look like. And all of these books were some critical books for me in figuring that out. And it's interesting now that whenever I end a contract, this is one of the quotes that I like to share and kind of like my farewell message to the teams that I've worked with and everyone, because this is the quote, all right, or this is the message that really resonated with me, that made me move into the field that I am in now and move away from the work that I was doing before. And it's because I wanted to do something that was far more meaningful and work that could last long after I am gone, right? Work that even if I failed at it, even if I didn't accomplish everything that I wanted to accomplish, it would still leave some amount of success. It would still impact someone or something in some way that resonates. And that was important to me.
Please read the quote for us.
Oh, the quote.
To
Okay.
hear it,
So it says,
to hear it from your voice.
It says, do work that's worthy of wrestling with the angel, work that lasts beyond your lifetime, work that's important enough and bold enough to allow failure to seem some form of success. And that's from this book, Michael Bungay-Staniers, from this book, The Coaching Habit, Say Less, Ask More, and Change the Way You Lead Forever.
Okay. All right.
That was it.
That was wonderful and educational and inspirational.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yes. So we want to thank you so much, Jody, for joining us today. And
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We wish you all the best in your entrepreneurial endeavors. And someone wrote in the chat, thank you for a wonderful session.
Oh, awesome.
Yes, we're so happy to have had you. I'm going to go ahead and stop